My name's Sashi Davies. I'm an advisor to Boss Energy Limited. I've been with them since about 2017. It's a very exciting company to work with because it's one of the nearest term uranium developers, and that's something that really interests me, is to see a new mine come into operation. My background is very much sort of nuclear and uranium sales. I've been at this since I left university. So I've worked as a buyer in the physics side of things, and then also on the production side of things. So I've worked with the Rossing uranium mine, various brokers, traders, junior miners. Most recently, I worked with the Husab mine, which is where I met Duncan when we were both working for the junior that sold the Husab mine to China General Nuclear. It was a very exciting time. It was one of the most interesting projects that I've worked with. But it's very different to this mine because CGN and Husab, that was a mine that would produce 15 million pounds, and the delay between making the decision and coming into production was several years. So you were making plans in an environment that you knew would be changing. Whereas with Honeymoon, Boss's mine, it's very different. It's a much smaller project, but you're looking at less than a year between saying, we're going to go ahead, this is what the uranium environment is going to look like, these are what prices are going to look like, and actually delivering the uranium. To be involved in the uranium market, you actually have to be active. It's a pretty opaque market. It's the sort of market where if you get one piece of information, you can interpret it in a certain way. You have to be able to see several parts of the picture. One can be pretty misleading, whereas the more you talk to people, the more you're actually active in selling, buying, that's when you actually get to know what's happening. And even then, it's only a part of the picture. So I'm constantly talking to people. I talk to market participants, whether they be sellers, buyers, intermediaries, and that gives me a pretty good picture of what's going on. Today, I think we're where we were at the beginning of the big move back in the early 2000s. It has that same feel to it. Everyone knows there's something happening, but because there's some structural changes as well as market movements, it's hard to tell how quickly and when it's going to move. Everyone knows it's going to happen. It's just the timing. So that's the kind of feeling we have at the moment. I mean, the fundamentals are changing all the time. I mean, in terms of if you want to look at demand, the uncertainty now is on how much more demand are we going to have in the near term, as well as how far out is it going to go. And on the supply side, are we actually going to be able to bring production on quickly enough to meet that gap? And if you look at inventory, I have never seen so much inventory sucked out of the market as I have over the last 3 to 5 years. Over the next 12 months, it's a market where there are several catalysts, and if just one thing changes, I think the price could go above its last high. I think logistics are some of the biggest challenges at this point in time. If there are more sanctions imposed on Russia, or if Western utilities have to withdraw from contracts with Russia earlier than they'd anticipated, again, that could be a significant catalyst. This is one of the most exciting times I've seen. The previous round, it was a case of renewables, we're going green, there is climate change, but there wasn't policy backing an increase in nuclear power. This time round, it's measurable, it's a reduction in carbon, it's net zero. So the only way to achieve that is to have baseload nuclear. And we've seen that. We've seen more supportive policies in the United States. We're seeing it across the world. I mean, in France, we've seen new reactors announced. It's just really very, very exciting. Boss and Australia has a very strong role to play in this new market because geopolitical issues are taking center stage. And Australia and Boss are very important in this. Australia has huge resources but actually produces very little. And utilities are searching for diversification. Boss has a particular advantage because it's a near-term producer. Australia has the advantage of being a geopolitically stable and favourable country. China is, I suppose, in an enviable position in that it can buy globally. But China's demand is huge. It's a country that is moving forward. It has a real desire to move away from coal generation, but its energy needs are so enormous that it still has to depend on coal, but it is intent on increasing the nuclear share of its generation. China will continue to expand and continue to contract, not just with Kazakhstan, but it'll continue to contract with Russia, but it'll also be looking for global diversification. So through taking more from Kazakhstan and other countries that it can do that the West doesn't have access to, it puts more pressure on Western suppliers in terms of their supply sources, which are outside these areas. And at the same time, I think they have a desire to diversify themselves. So I think we'll see more demand from China, and we'll see more demand from the West because of China's increased offtake from these areas, if that makes sense.